For more now on the release of today's interim report from the Royal Commission into Veteran Suicides, I'm joined by the National President of the RSL, Greg Melick. Greg, thanks for your time. What's your response to what you've heard and read today from that interim report?
Oh, it's a very important milestone and a very good first step. We agree with all of the recommendations which I've had a chance to consider. Some of the ones about access to information I just don't have enough information on yet because unfortunately I've been in the tribunal all morning and haven't had a chance to read it. But some of the important things are they've addressed the funding issues that we've been agitating with governments for the past 3 years, to the effect that DVA funding must be demand driven and not subject to a begging bowl every year trying to find out what funding they were going to get before they decide what their staffing levels are going to be for future years. The harmonisation of legislation is critically important. The legislation is very complex. Us lawyers have enormous trouble trying to interpret it or determine which is the best path for veterans with various conditions to take. So what chances a veteran or their advocates got?
Yeah,
and there's some of the cultural issues.
It results in a backlog. We've got a backlog of some upwards of 40,000 was the backlog reported as of May this year, Greg.
Yes, well, part of the problems were that, one, that the APS caps for DVA were the same as the rest of the public service until the previous government decided to remove them after a fair bit of agitation from both us and DVA and other ESOs. But that doesn't overcome the problem created by the necessary time taken to train such people. Secondly, we've also created a problem because we advise people currently serving in the ADF who had access to all the relevant services to make their claims now, not after they got out, so they didn't have to worry about it when they didn't have support mechanisms around them. So we now have the situation where at least 50% of the current claims before DVA are from currently serving veterans. And that's just exacerbated the problem.
How much of it goes to the culture within the military as well? You read various accounts in this report that says very clearly that abuse has been a part of the suicidal behaviour of some of those affected here.
Look, I was in the military for a long time, and the change in the military between 1966 and 2018 when I left was just enormous. There was a culture of yelling and screaming and abuse at certain institutions in the military. Hopefully that's now gone. I know there's been significant changes in the last 5 or 6 years, and there certainly were in my last few years in the military. I still think we have a fair way to go, bearing in mind that in the military you have people that are half a generation behind a lot of the people who are now joining, and their life experiences and their knowledge of various conditions and people's circumstances differ considerably.
The report also has a crack at the former government. It says that, in our view, the lack of response and progress from June 2019 to May 2022 amounted to a dereliction of the government's duty to veterans. Do you share that view?
No, I don't, unfortunately. I think there certainly could have been improvement, but we worked very closely with government, and although it took time to convince them, they reacted positively to all of our major recommendations, except, of course, the major one we're still trying to get through is demand-driven funding. We've got to bear in mind the previous government allocated about $280 million additional dollars in relation to remove public service caps, to improve IT, and to increase the payments to mental health professionals, because veterans were not getting as much access as previously because NDIA unilaterally increased the amounts they were paying them. So I think dereliction of duty is far too high a tag to put on it, although it certainly could have been better.
The number one recommendation in the report to simplify and harmonise veteran compensation and rehabilitation legislation, it seems to go to the heart of the problem that we've seen within DVA and the various roadblocks that veterans have had in trying to get support.
Yes, and we've been agitating this for quite some time. There needs to be a lot of time and effort put into it, and money. And part of the problem is the veterans themselves, because they want to pick and choose the the best possible bit out of every piece of legislation, which will cause some problems. There are some veterans currently, and not many, on 110% disability because they pick a bit out of the MERC, a bit out of the DIRC and a bit out of the VEA. If we're going to harmonise the Acts, we've got to reach a consensus situation of which is the best way forward for all.
RSL President Greg Melick, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Right, thanks, Karen.